Alana's up. What's up, Alana? She says, "Hey, hiya guys, I'm back. Just been checking out your webinar with Lisa Allan from RankFeedr. Just wondering if you would just use the ping feature in the product, or also use the feeds to populate. Use the feeds you create to populate a small site to create more topical relevancy." Okay, so my answer to that is no. I wouldn't use the feeds from RankFeedr to as like a content syndication tool, or to populate another site with content, because it's not really designed for that. A better tool for that would be something like RSS Masher, Damon Nelson's tool. And the only reason I say that is because the RankFeedr tool is pretty much all contextual, right? It's like text-based is what I should say. I'm sorry. It's all text-based. So like when you create the feeds, it's all basically like just a standard RSS output. As far as I know, that like, for example, if you take the RSS feed from the news-round.com or whatever it is URL that creates the RSS feed from inside of RankFeedr, I don't want to say I've never, if I remember correctly, I tried using that to syndicate and it doesn't publish the full post. It just publishes the snippets like it looks like when you're viewing the feed in Firefox, for example, or the HTML version of the feed, because in RankFeedr, it gives you an HTML URL too, so that you can view, view the feed itself instead of just like the XML coding. You can view it in like Chrome, for example. Firefox, by the way, you have to have an extension or an add-on in Firefox now that will allow you to view RSS feeds. Used to always be a native function of Firefox, and apparently now you have to have an extension or an add-on added to Firefox to be able to view an XML RSS feed like in an HTML format. Okay. So RankFeedr gives you an HTML format URL and you can take a look at it. That's similar to what, if I remember correctly, it's been a few years since I've tried syndicating, but I remember trying, and it might have been updated since then, but it would display or republish the posts as they looked in the HTML feed version of the feed, if that makes sense. So the reason why it wouldn't be good for using for content syndication is because that looks awfully spammy, because it's all text-based. There's no images, they're very short snippets. So you could try that, for example, to populate, like use a syndication network. And I had tried that a few years ago, but again, because it comes across with those real short, like summary posts, basically like what it looks like when you're viewing a feed, right? So just the link and in a very brief summary, and that's it. It's just a list of links. Then it would create those really short little posts on the syndication network properties, and it looks spammy, and it could very likely get your account terminated on those platforms that you're republishing to. If you're doing it to a self-hosted website, then where you're not having to worry about it being terminated, then yeah, possibly. But again, if it looks spammy and are just really, really short, I don't see how that's going to add much value. Something like RSS Masher gives you a much, much better ability to use other people's feeds, or any feeds that super feeds that you create from any number of feeds. But you can edit the feed and the outputs to where you can insert images, full text, summary text, all different kinds of things. You can insert your own images, or, iframes and banners and calls to action and all that kind of stuff. And so those that tool is much better for it. The way I always looked at them was RSS Masher was more like a marketing tool and a traffic generation tool, and RankFeedr was strictly an SEO tool, right? So one of the things that I've done, and I'm not going to show this because I show it in the mastermind, but I would love to show it here. But when you create a RankFeedr feed, especially for local projects, and I've talked about how to do this before in Syndication Academy and Mastermind and everything else, but you can create a RSS super feed where you're combining topically relevant feeds plus locally relevant feeds. So you can go to local websites, local municipality government website, any type of local blogs, events calendars, things like that have RSS feeds, and you can create a locally topically relevant feed that you can then create an embed code from using FeedBurner. I can't walk you through the steps on that either, but you can create what's called a Buzz Boost embed code using FeedBurner from that RankFeedr feed, right? And then embed that into, for example, like an ID page, an ad ID page for a local project. And it ends up working really well because it continually dynamically updates the ID page, which gets the bots crawling it, right, often with other people's content, but it's topically relevant and or locally relevant or geographically relevant. So it's just a great way to add relevancy to a page without you having to constantly add the content, which, by the way, you can add your feeds into RankFeedr feeds. So anytime you're publishing content, it will automatically insert it. But that ends up working fairly well. In fact, that the URL, the HTML version of the RSS feed that RankFeedr creates is an indexable link, and it will index. And in fact, one of the tree care projects that I had set this up on, in fact, it's the one that I did the training on for this exact method that I'm talking about. If you do a search for that company name, so it's the brand search plus that location, the news round.com or whatever URL, the HTML version of that feed is indexed and ranked on page 1 for a brand search. So it's really interesting. It's powerful. You can do some pretty cool things with that. So for example, like that Buzz Boost embed code would be a really good embed code to buy an embed gig from MGYB, because now you've got, again, you're creating co-citation with a RankFeedr feed, and you're guilty by association, right? By placing your links in among all of those other links that are relevant in some way, either topically or geographically, it can create, a lot of additional relevancy. And then you can just hammer that embed code either strictly on its own by doing embeds and then backlinks to the embeds, or you can embed it in your ID page, for example, and then, do embeds for your ID page and run backlinks to that. So there's a number of things that you can do with it SEO wise, but as far as using it for like content syndication, I haven't tested that in a couple of years now, but the last time I did try it, it was, they came out really ugly and spammy looking, the post did. So I would recommend RSS Smasher as a tool for that, if that's what you want to do. Both tools are valuable. Let me tell you that, just in different ways. So any comments on that? Moving on.